Phase rough turning composite cycle command G72. The PPT shows two parts. Compare them and see what the difference is. The one on the left is a typical shaft part, while the one on the right is a typical disc part. These two types of parts have considerable machining allowances in the X and Z directions, respectively. Previously, we learned that G71 command, which is very convenient for machining shaft parts. However, if we use G71 to rough machine the disc part on the right, it would create many cutting layers, making it cumbersome. In this case, we need to use a new command. The phase rough turning composite cycle command G72 to machine it. The G72 command is very similar to G71, so you can learn them comparatively. The G72 command is suitable for rough machining of bar stock with small machining allowance in the Z direction, and large machining allowance in the X direction, which is typical for disc parts. During the cutting cycle, the tool advances in the Z direction and cuts parallel to the X-axis. This command only requires specifying the depth of cut for rough machining, the machining allowance, and the finishing pass. The system will automatically generate the rough machining pass and the number of passes to complete the rough machining. The specific format is as follows. G72 W triangle D RE, G72 PNS, QNF, U triangle U, W triangle W, FFSSTT. As you can see, this command is very similar to the G71 command. The second line in the program format is exactly the same as in G71, and you can track whether the relevant parameters in the second line have the same meanings. NS and NF still represent the sequence numbers of the first and last segments of the finishing program. U and W still represent the finishing allowances in the X and Z directions. The first line of the program contains two parameters, where the second parameter R still represents the retraction amount. The first parameter is changed from U in G71 to W in G72. Typically, X, Y, and Z are used to represent the three coordinates, and their corresponding incremental coordinates are represented by U, V, and W. So in G71, U represents the depth of cut in the X direction, while in G72, W represents the depth of cut in the Z direction, which is commonly referred to as the cutting depth. Next, let's watch the G72 machining animation. The gray color represents the blank dimensions, and the right represents the tool path. From the tool path diagram, you can see that by simply providing the finishing shape, axial finishing allowance, and cutting depth, the machine can automatically complete the machining. There are also several issues to be aware of when using the G72 command. During the rough turning process, the F, S, and T functions specified in the NS to NF program segments will be only the F, S, and T functions appearing in the G72 command segment will be effective during machining. Additionally, when using the G72 command, the part profile must meet the requirement of being monotonically increasing or decreasing in both the X and Z directions simultaneously. Another important point to note is that in the first segment of the G71 machining program, only the X coordinate is allowed to appear, whereas in the G72 machining program, only the Z coordinate is allowed to appear in the first segment. After rough machining this part with G72, the remaining finishing allowance can still be removed using the G70 finishing program command. The G70 command allows for the entire remaining allowance left by the G72 rough machining to be removed in one pass, completing the entire pass finishing process. Next, let's do a practice exercise, as shown in the figure. First, determine the parameters in G72. The depth of cut is 0.5 mm, the retraction amount is 1 mm, and the fit rate is 0.3 mm every rate. The finishing allowance in the X direction is 0.5 mm. With no allowance left in the Z direction, and the spindle speed is 800 rate every minute. After these cutting parameters are determined, let's look at the program. First, write the cycle start point. Second, add the prepared G72 command. Third, complete the finishing program segment. Fourth, add the G70 finishing program command. And finally, fifth, add the program's header and footer. This completes the program. When observing the G72 tool pass, you can see that during the last pass of rough machining, the tool moves from the left side of the part to the right side, which is related to the difference in the tool's approach direction and cutting direction during each cycle. Therefore, the final finishing program segment should be written from the left end to the right end in the opposite direction of the finishing pass, previously written for shaft pass, which requires special attention.